Hey everyone, this is Dave Hulegaard, and thank you for joining me here on the inaugural Hulegaard Books podcast. In addition to using this time to bring you up to speed on what's happening in my world, I also want to use this opportunity to bring on special guests and cover a variety of interesting topics. Well, hopefully interesting. I suppose time will tell on that one. Now, as you may have seen from the announcement I posted recently on Facebook and Twitter, my short story, The Tunnel, has been chosen for an upcoming anthology titled Edge of Oblivion. I'm really excited about this opportunity because not only will my story be included among the stories of some prolific indie authors, but all the proceeds from the book sales are going to charity. I've invited Tony Healey, the man behind the anthology, to join me on the show and talk about this very special project. Now, Tony is a best-selling author from the UK, known for his epic sci-fi series Far From Home, as well as many other fantastic works, which you can find through your Amazon Kindle or by visiting his website, www.tonyhealey.com. Tony, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hello, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start by diving into your most recent project, Edge of Oblivion. Now, you began this project as a charity drive. Can you talk a little bit more about how this all came about?
The project came around because my wife's friend has a child with CF, cystic fibrosis, and she was telling me how her friend was struggling to raise money for the day when her child would need stuff that isn't covered by the National Health Service, the NHS. And it really made me think, what would happen if one of my daughters had something like CF? It limits their lifespans, it cuts their life short, and it reduces the quality of their life. I found that an absolutely terrifying idea. I just wondered how parents cope with it, and how amazing those parents are that do manage to cope with it, knowing what their child has and how it will affect them and stuff like that. So I thought, well, maybe I could put something together, taking the lead from what Bernard did with the Kindle All-Stars, which was for missing children, exploited children. And I thought maybe I could do the same sort of thing to try and raise some money that can be donated to the CF Trust, and that's what I decided to do. That's what we've done.
You're collaborating with a talented list of indie authors who have lent stories to this anthology. Now, how did you go about choosing them?
When it came to choosing the stories, it was actually pretty easy, I've got to admit. Obviously I know you, I read your collection, Strangers, I know Bernard, obviously, William Vitka, all of these people, Courtney Cantrell. It wasn't too hard. I knew that people, some of the stories I've read before, like yours, The Tunnel, and Bernard's, and a lot of them were sent in new, but it wasn't that hard, I've got to admit. I did reject a lot of stories. I had a lot of stories sent in, and I'd say maybe I rejected about 8 or 9 stories, not because they weren't very good, but because they just didn't fit. They didn't quite fit with what I wanted to do, and so I couldn't accept them. I just chose stories that I didn't really have a set sort of theme in mind. I just knew that I wanted different material in there. I wanted a certain type of material. I wanted speculative fiction. I wanted some horror. I wanted edgy stuff that I hadn't read elsewhere. When I read the story, I knew it was correct for the end. I think it's just gut feeling, really. Some stories that were sent in to me, they either just didn't work, or they didn't quite gel with what I wanted to do. So it was quite easy choosing the story, and then there was the editing and making suggestions, and not sort of wanting to strip a story apart and make it my own story, because that wasn't the point. It was to take a fantastic story that's been sent to me to kindly contribute to the anthology, and it was really just to sort of try and refine it a bit, make it slightly better than it was before. And in some cases, that wasn't possible. Some of the stories, I think, are so good that you couldn't improve them. I'm not going to tell you which stories I think they are, but I think the majority of the stories in the anthology are like that, to be honest. So yeah, it came easy, I've got to admit. I think I made it quite clear from the outset just what the anthology was aimed at, and people didn't submit too far off from that, really.
Now, when you started, were you looking for a particular theme for this collection, or did it just sort of materialize as the authors began submitting stories?
I never honestly thought of doing an anthology in any other sort of genre than speculative fiction. To me, it lends itself to different short stories, a real mixture of different ideas and different approaches to things. And I think the cover art that I decided on pretty early into the project, I think tells the reader straight away what the collection's going to be about. And people expect a certain thing from something like Edge of Oblivion, and I think they'll get it. They'll get a real sort of cocktail of different stories. Yeah, I think they'll really like it.
I know that sometimes when you're working with so many different authors, you can run into issues with ego. Did you experience any of that with this anthology?
I just want to make a point here, sort of going off topic, but when I announced the project, there's an author, a quite well-known author, I'm not going to say his name, or her name, could be either, and they got in contact and said that they'd be interested in submitting a story, and I sort of went through what I was trying to do, why I was doing it, what where the profits and things from the book are going to go, and they were all set for it. And then when I think it sort of clicked that I wasn't with a major publisher, that I'm an independent author, and then that certain person just decided to just ignore my emails, totally blank me, and I think it's typical of the way things are at the minute in publishing, in that there's like a class divide. You've got people that are traditionally published through a publishing house, they've got their books in print in a shop, that's great, and you've got us, and I think we're seen as like a lower class, we're like a working class, and it's wrong. I mean, like today, I went into Waterstone's bookshop to have a look around. I didn't buy anything because they're just too highly priced. It's really bad. It's really sad that bookshops like Waterstone's are in trouble. And I think it's a shame. I miss seeing bookshops on the street. But am I going to go and give my money to Waterstones to keep them afloat? No. People aren't prepared to pay above the odds. I can get the same book, again I won't say what it was, but a certain book I was looking at in Waterstones for $16.99, I can get it on Amazon for £10. You can't compete with that, and that's why the trouble is they're not rolling with the punches. They're not changing as everything's changing around them. They're not changing with it. They're staying the same, and they think that by being stubborn they can sort of weather the storm, but they can't. We're changing the game, and really we should be sort of chasing after them, and we're not. They're trying to catch up with us, and it's not working. So my message to the author that basically got cold feet and didn't want to know because he thought, well, jokers, they're not to be taken seriously, is, well, one day you will want to be involved in projects that we're running, because one day we will be running things. You're just in an old-fashioned, out-of-date system that doesn't work anymore, and one day you'll wake up and realise it.
Amen to that, brother. Now, do you feel as though indie authors are starting to make some headway, though?
There are authors out there doing very well. You take, from my visit to the bookshop today, you take someone like Emma Newman. She started off as an independent author, and luckily she got signed. She done well on her own, but she got signed by Bad Robot, and now they brought her stuff out, and her books were in Waterstones today. She's done well, and I think maybe that's the right way to go. You have a mix. You bring your own stuff out. You do some projects with a publisher. A big publisher. You do some projects with a small press. Try different things. It's like it's no different to putting out a create space version of your Kindle book and an audio book version, an Audible version. But I just think that if they think that they're going to outlast us, they're wrong. We're making, a lot of us are making a steady little income from what we're doing, and in the long run, we're doing better than people that are signed with major publishers. Doesn't that tell them something? And you can go on the Amazon, and you can buy a hardback for £9 and buy the Kindle version for £9. Their whole outlook on the whole ebook thing is totally wrong. They should be leading the way, and yet they're not. It's their own doing, really. They're really to blame, I think, on bookshops closing down, because they're not evolving. They're trying to dig their heels in and keep everything as it was, and you can't do that. You can't do it because they're not willing to do that. The prices of books, places like Borders. Look at Borders. They closed down, and I think it's because they can't. They didn't change. They didn't change with the way things were going. They thought the ebook thing would just go away, that it was a fad, and it's pretty much been proven now that it's not. It's the way things are going to be in the future. There's no manufacturing cost. What cost is there? The formatting and a cover. That's it. It takes away a lot of trouble in making a book, and they don't like that because at the end of the day, that is their business. But when people can go on Amazon and they can get a book at a reduced cost, or they can buy a Kindle version at maybe a lot less than a paperback, or the hardback, then how can bookshops survive? But publishers don't see that. It's an old-fashioned system in a modern world. So how can they survive?
I guess we'll see, right? I mean, I, for one, am pretty happy to be on this side of the line, I'll tell you that much. Now, in addition to orchestrating this whole process, you also took time to write your own story for the anthology. Tell us a little bit about The Fucker Out of Space. Brilliant title, by the way.
The Fucker Out of Space is me trying to do something different, and just, something a little bit edgy, and a little bit, I had an email conversation with William Vitka, and I think in the course of the conversation, in the course of firing messages back and forth, we got to discuss Enemy Mine, the film, and it sort of occurred to me that you could do quite an X-rated version of that sort of story. A human and an alien alone on a planet, So that's what the story is. It's what happens when you get, well, in my story, when there's a male human and a female alien who's not a bad-looking alien, and what happens between the two of them and what results from it. And I think it's it's a bit of a twisted story, but I think people will like it. The title isn't just for shock value. The title is to let you know straight away what sort of story it's going to be, and so you're not surprised when you get to the ending.
And now I'll never be able to look at Louis Gossett Jr. the same way again, so, thanks for that. What type of reader do you think Edge of Oblivion will appeal to the most?
Edge of Oblivion, this collection of short stories, will appeal to any reader that enjoys sci-fi, enjoys reading about things like time travel, supernatural stuff, anything. If your interests are right across the board, this anthology is for you.
As an added bonus, you also reached out to Bruce Pennington and received permission to use one of his most popular works for the cover. That's awesome. But why did you want that particular piece of art, and what was that experience working with him like?
When I was a kid, my uncle bought me a copy of Flights of Icarus. It's a book of artwork from the 70s, 80s, collected into hardback. And one of the pictures I always liked, there's stuff in it by Chris Foss and people like that, but one of the pictures I always liked was Children of Tomorrow by Bruce Pennington. And when it came to sort of thinking about the anthology and what I wanted to do with it, that was the artwork I wanted to have. So I found Bruce's site online and found an email address and wrote him quite a long explanation of what I was going to do and how much I liked his work. Never expected a response. In fact, I asked Kerry Knutson to do the cover, and I actually said to her, I don't think we're going to get the artwork I want. Can you do something similar? So we sort of batted things back and forth, and we couldn't quite get it. And then I got an email back from Bruce saying yeah. So that was it really. I found the best version of the image I could find, and Kerry worked her magic on it. And we really just wanted it to be, have the focus be the artwork, but also make it look like something from the 70s, from the 60s, 70s, the heyday of sci-fi,
I love the old school sci-fi artwork from like the 70s and the 80s. I mean, I grew up on that stuff. I'm sure it looks cheesy to the kids today, but man, when I was a kid, those artists owned my attention, and they enticed me to pick up that book or to rent that movie. I mean, I shudder to think of a world where I might not have ever seen Kroll. I mean, it's truly the product of a bygone era.
I really like the image. I think that it's got a sort of like post-World War II feel about it. The way the couple are running up the hill, you've got the poppies in the foreground. Obviously, that's very World War, that sort of era, that imagery. And I don't know, it's like the ships, it's like the spaceship has been there a long time. It's like a relic, but it's still floating. So it's sort of mysterious. It's like the guy is dragging the woman up the hill to sort of see it, And I think there's to my young mind, when I was, years ago when I was a kid, it made me think about the story behind the picture, and that's the best sort of paintings like that by people like Bruce Pennington. They do that. They spark your imagination, and that's why I think it's such a brilliant image. And everyone who's seen the cover for Edge of Oblivion thinks the same. That everyone loves it. So I think I've picked a good one there. And thanks to Bruce for letting us use it.
Now, Tony, you've been very busy this past year or so, seeming to really find your niche with the brilliant Far From Home series. I mean, first of all, congratulations on all your success. It's well deserved. And secondly, what do you have in store for 2014 to follow all that up?
I never honestly expected Far From Home to do as well as it has. The idea was to just tell a long story, but on a monthly, month by month in episodes, and that's what I did. It took 12 months, ran to about 140,000 words, something like that, and I did other projects in between. At some point, around near the end, I sort of ran out of steam, and then I sort of thought, well, I owe it to people to finish the series and give them an ending. And I always had the ending in mind anyway. So I finished it up and packaged it together because some of a lot of people liked it. A lot of people liked reading it the way they did. But then similarly, a lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people think that a serial is a good way of reading an ongoing work. And there's a lot of people out there that absolutely hate the idea. They hate shelling out, 99p, 99 cents, whatever, each time. And, in the case of Far From Home, it was 12 episodes. So, doing the math, they were paying 12 quid to read the whole thing. So I thought I'd package it together, offer it for $2.99. I thought that's about the same price as a cup of coffee, and it just flew up. It just, flew off. It's done really well. I'm very grateful to everyone who's bought a copy and supported it, and messaged me, emailed me, got in touch. I do appreciate it all. So this year I've got quite a few things planned for Far From Home. I've got sequels in the works. I've already done one. I've started another. My editor Laurie, she knows about most of it. I'm doing a collaboration with a guy called Matt Cox, and that's called Operation Chimera, and that will come out throughout the year, and that's published at Curiosity Quills. And I'm doing another crossover with Bernard Schaffer, or Schaefer, I don't know, this is my English accent, Schaffer, and that's going to be, we did a crossover before, it was called Sunhammer. Mine was Sunhammer Part 1, and he did Part 2. This time around, he's going to do Part 1, and I'm going to do Part 2, and we were sort of batting ideas back and forth and discussing doing another crossover, but not revisiting the same ground as the first time we teamed up. And I think the idea we came up with is pretty good. So he's going to do the first half of that, and then I'll do my half. So I'm pretty excited for that. I'm also teaming up with someone else on sort of it's a Far From Home spin-off, but it's going to be Frontier, it's called, and it's set on a backwater planet, sort of fending for themselves, that sort of thing. And I think people will really like that. There'll be more information on that later on. And I'm also going to be doing in case that wasn't enough, I'm also doing another monthly serial. But the difference with this one, it's called Shadow Force, and it's gonna be monthly like Far From Home. It's set in the same universe as Far From Home. It's another spin-off. But the difference with this is it's going to be in seasons of 6 episodes. So if you think to yourself, well, to buy 6, it's going to cost me £6, then you can wait until I've done all 6 and buy them for $2.99 or whatever they end up as, and that'll be ongoing. I won't just finish that at 6. That'll be ongoing for a while. I've got quite a bit planned for it. excuse me. So I've got some good stuff planned for throughout the year. And for next year, my big project is going to be a fantasy series, or a trilogy. But I think that's going to take about 6 months to write. So I've got to sort of do what I want to do with Far From Home this year, so that it frees me up to do it next year, because I won't be working on anything else for 6 months. But obviously I'm not going to say anything about what that's about just yet. But there will be more Far From Home next year. I'm hoping. Well, I'm pretty sure. But my main project next year will be a fantasy series of books. So that's something to look forward to.
Wow. Well, that all sounds incredible, Tony. I mean, on a personal note, you've been one of my favorite indie authors because your imagination takes you down so many different avenues, and as a reader, I love that. Like, in addition to Far From Home, are you looking to revisit any other of your previous franchises, maybe even in the near future?
I've got 2 sequels in mind for the Colby Jones book that I did, Dead Pretty. It's just getting around to writing them. I've got the idea for the plot. I've got everything sort of worked out in my head. It's literally just fitting it in around my other stuff. But I will eventually write the sequels to Dead Pretty. I know a few people have emailed me to say that they're waiting for it, so I will deliver on that eventually. It's just, finding the time.
Well, my friend, it looks like we're just about out of time, so allow me to take this opportunity to say thanks so much for coming out and talking with me on the show. I mean, I'm really looking forward to the release of Edge of Oblivion, and honestly, just seeing what else you come up with this year.
Thanks, Dave. First time I've ever done this. It probably shows. Yeah, I just want to say something. If you've heard a sound while I've been talking, it's just where I'm whacking my pen against a notebook. I'm quite annoying like that. So anyway, yeah, thanks. I'm looking forward to read The Last Noble. I really enjoyed the first 2, so, hurry up. Bye.
Okay, Tony. Just for you, I'm going to hurry up and finish the Noble Trilogy. Well, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. Well, again, my thanks to author Tony Healey for joining me on the podcast. If you're unfamiliar with Tony's work, I strongly encourage you to seek him out on Amazon, on Facebook, or through his website, www.tonyhealey.com. Edge of Oblivion, an anthology containing 16 stories from some fantastic indie authors, and me, is coming to Kindle on February 3rd, and we all hope you'll check it out and enjoy it. All proceeds are going to the Cystic Fibrosis Trust, so you can support a great cause and get yourself a great book. I really appreciate you tuning in to listen. I'm David Hulegaard, and we'll see you next time on the Hulegaard Books podcast.